What if I told you that ancient Egypt wasn't just a civilization of tombs, temples, and towering pyramids, but a living altar and active interface between the mortal and the divine? Hidden beneath the golden sands of the Nile Valley is a story rarely told, not of pharaohs or battles, but of a sacred science, a system of divine communication known as Egyptian magic. Not stage tricks, not illusions, but a language of symbols, sound, and spirit that once bridged worlds. This wasn't merely religion, it was technology. A spiritual operating system used by priests, healers, and initiates to shape reality itself. Forget what Hollywood sold you mummies wrapped in linen and curses echoing through tombs. What you were not told is that Egypt guarded a roadmap to inner transformation, a way of aligning human intention with cosmic law. Why were their temples built with mathematical precision aligned to stars? Why did every ritual require exact words, colors, and gestures? Why did initiates endure years of silence, dreams, and purification just to speak a name? Because in Egyptian magic, to name something is to create it. To act without understanding is to invite chaos. In this video, we will step past the veil of sand and myth into the heart of one of humanity's most guarded mystical legacies. We'll explore the real meaning behind hieroglyphs, the sacred role of the Ka and bathed twin soul sand, the mysterious practices of temple magicians that still ripple through modern esotericism today. We'll uncover how the ancients saw the world not as separate and solid, but as fluid, symbolic, and alive. And, more importantly, how you can begin to experience this same magical lens, right here, right now. So stay with me. What you're about to hear is not a lesson. It's an invitation to remember something your soul may already know. Before there were books, there were stones. And before there were doctrines, there were stars. To truly grasp Egyptian magic, we must unlearn what we think we know about ancient Egypt. This was not a culture obsessed with death, it was a civilization devoted to eternal life. Not immortality in the body, but continuity of consciousness across dimensions. The magic of Egypt, or Heka as it was called, was not superstition. It was a sacred force, a word that literally meant the activating power of divine speech. Heka was the principle that made gods visible, words powerful, and symbols come alive. Egyptian priests weren't simply religious leaders, they were engineers of consciousness. Their temples were not churches, but living laboratories. Each structure precisely built with celestial alignment was designed to initiate transformation, not for the masses, but for those deemed ready to endure the mysteries. At the center of this world was Ma'at, not just a goddess, but the principle of divine order. To the Egyptians, all of creation moved in harmony, cosmic, social, personal. When Ma'at was honored, magic worked. When she was violated, chaos is threatened. And herein lies the key. Egyptian magic wasn't about forcing the universe to obey your will. It was about becoming attuned to the universe, so that your will aligned with the sacred rhythm of existence. Now, why has this knowledge been lost or worse, distorted? Because magic requires initiation. Not just into rituals, but into a worldview. One where reality is not just matter, but mind. Where hieroglyphs are not just art, but sound formulas. Where statues are not representations, but inhabited vessels invoked by chants, breath, and offerings. When foreign empires came, Persians, Greeks, Romans, they recorded only fragments. They saw the temples, but not the truths hidden within. Later, colonial archaeologists would reduce magic to primitive superstition, severing the symbolic from the sacred. What survived was stripped of its essence. The rituals, disconnected from their inner meaning, became dead ceremony. But if we listen closely to temple walls, to myth, to silence, we find a different story. One in which each scarab, feather, or serpent holds metaphysical weight. One where Thoth, god of wisdom, whispers that magic is not manipulation but memory. The memory of our origin. The memory of divine structure. What no one told you is that Egyptian magic was never meant to be forgotten. It was encoded, intentionally hidden, waiting for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And now, we begin to see. To understand Egyptian magic is to enter a world where everything is alive. A world where the wind isn't just air, it's breath. Where the sun isn't a ball of fire but the eye of a god watching your every move. where speech isn't just communication but creation. Let's begin with the cornerstone of this magical worldview: words. In ancient Egypt, words were not passive. They were acts. To speak something, especially in ritual, was to bring it into being. This is why every prayer, every hymn, every invocation had to be recited exactly with tone, breath, and cadence. The wrong pronunciation could unravel the ritual. The right one could open portals. Their hieroglyphs weren't just letters. They were magical sigils, each holding layers of symbolic, sonic, and spiritual force. A single glyph could mean sun, gold, Ra, or eternity, depending on the state of consciousness in which it was read. The scribes who wrote them weren't just educated, they were initiates. Every ink stroke was a spell, every scroll a portal. Then comes the temple. Not a place of worship as we know it, but an energetic machine. Imagine this. You walk into a temple. The walls are covered in cosmic blue and gold. Lotus flowers spiral upward. The scent of resin and crushed myrrh fills your lungs. You feel dizzy, but not from the heat, it's the frequency. Everything in the temple was tuned. The height of the ceilings, the shape of the columns, the angles of light entering through narrow slits. These structures were meant to alter your consciousness, to shift your perception from the mundane to the mystical. You didn't just walk into a temple, you ascended through dimensions. Next, the ritual. Egyptian magic required three sacred forces. 1. Sound, chants, and incantations, often whispered or vibrated in resonance with the body. 2. Gesture, hand signs, postures, and movements aligned with sacred geometry. 3. Offering not as bribery to gods but as energetic exchange. Dates, wine, bread, incense. Each item carried a symbolic frequency. But perhaps the most misunderstood aspect is the soul. In Egyptian cosmology, you didn't have one soul, you had many. The Ka, your vital essence, your double. The Ba, your personality, your mobile spirit that could fly between realms. The Ankh, your transformed, divine self achieved after death, if proper rituals were performed. Every magical act aimed at aligning these aspects. When the Ca and Ba were out of sync, illness occurred. When they were harmonized, miracles could happen. This is where names come in. To know the true name of a god, a demon, or even yourself was to hold power over it. In the legend of Isis and Ra, the goddess tricks the sun god into revealing his hidden name. Once she knows it, she becomes equal to him. Magic, then, is not about dominance but about remembering your true identity. Even the deities were not seen as distant beings to be worshipped. They were forces of nature and consciousness to be merged with. To become Horus was not to pray to a falcon-headed god but to activate the warrior light within. To invoke Hathor was to awaken the divine feminine through music, dance, and joy. And the ultimate goal? To transmute, to become a living embodiment of the divine blueprint. Not in death, but in life. This was the path of the initiate. Not to escape the world, but to realize its sacredness layer by layer, symbol by symbol. Still, there are deeper layers we haven't touched. What lies beneath these practices? What truths were buried intentionally hidden within myth and metaphor? There is a reason Egyptian magic was hidden in metaphor, encoded in temples, and guarded by silence. Because true power is never given freely. It must be earned, and above all understood. In the Golden Age of Egypt, magic was not a tool for personal gain. It was a sacred responsibility. But as time passed and empires fell, that sacredness was diluted. Knowledge once passed in whispers between master and initiate was scattered, misinterpreted, or worse, weaponized. Let's return to one of the most potent elements of this magic: myth. To the untrained eye, myths are stories, but to an initiate, they are maps. Take the tale of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, only to be resurrected by his wife, Isis. To the casual listener, it's a divine soap opera. But deeper still, it's an esoteric teaching. Osiris represents the higher self, fragmented by ego, chaos, or trauma. Set, the force of disorder and temptation, breaks the unity of spirit. Isis, the divine feminine, becomes the healer, the soul's intuitive power to reassemble the scattered self. And Horus, their son, is the new consciousness born from integration. The myth is the magic. It encodes transformation in symbols, not sermons. But what happens when that myth is forgotten? When the map is burned? Distortion. When Greek and Roman invaders absorbed Egyptian wisdom, they stripped its soul. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, became Hermes Trismegistus, and his teachings were rewritten into the Hermetic texts. Though beautiful and profound, much was lost in translation. The ritual became philosophy. The mystery became metaphor. Even worse, when later occultists tried to revive Egyptian magic in the 18th and 19th centuries, they often did so through Western lenses, reinterpreting everything with Christian, Masonic, or Rosicrucian filters. The result? A fractured system built on aesthetics, not essence. The true initiates those trained within the temples, possibly hidden lineages surviving underground faded from memory. Or perhaps, they chose to disappear. But why? Because Egyptian magic is not a safe path. It demands inner death, ego collapse, the confrontation of Isfet the shadow. To invoke Ma'at is to face what within you is not in balance. To utter sacred words without preparation is to invite energies you may not be able to contain. This is why silence was sacred. Why initiates swore vows not just of secrecy, but of integrity. Let's explore one more symbol, the ankh. Often called the key of life, the ankh is far more than jewelry. Its loop represents the eternal soul, the womb, the divine feminine. The crossbar, the arms of experience. The vertical spine, the path between heaven and earth. Together, the ankh represents the fusion of opposites, life and death, male and female, human and divine. But few know that in rituals, the ankh wasn't just held, it was breathed through. Priests would inhale air passed through a golden ankh during ceremony, believing the object to filter energy, transmuting physical breath into divine life force. Magic, then, wasn't metaphorical, it was physiological. Even the idea of resurrection wasn't limited to the dead. To die before you die, to undergo the inner initiation and be reborn consciously, was the path of the true magician. But this knowledge is perilous without grounding. Used selfishly, magic decays. Used with reverence, it awakens. So the question is not, does Egyptian magic work? The real question is, are you ready to become the kind of being it responds to? Because to walk this path is not to command power. It is to become power and harmony, in humility, in sacred knowing. You don't need a temple in Luxor to practice Egyptian magic. You are the temple. The rituals, hieroglyphs, and chants of the ancients were never meant to stay buried in tombs. They were blueprints designed to awaken the sacred within you. So how do you begin? Start not with spells, but with perception. 1. Reclaim the symbolic mind. Egyptians saw the world as alive with meaning. A bird wasn't just a bird, it was a message. A cloud, a sign, a dream, a directive. Practice. At dawn, step outside. Observe with reverence. Let your mind decode the symbols around you. Ask, what is life showing me today? Keep a book of signs, a daily journal of omens, dreams, synchronicities. Over time, this reawakens the symbolic layer of reality, the true language of the divine. 2. Speak with intention. In Egyptian magic, every word was an act of creation. Idle speech scatters energy. But a single phrase, spoken with purpose, can realign your inner world. Practice. Create a morning invocation. It can be simple. With the breath of Ma'at, I align with truth. Speak it while standing, hand over heart, facing the rising sun. Let your voice carry awareness, not just sound. 3. Create a sacred space. The ancients understood the importance of ritual environment. Even a modest altar can shift your energy. What to include? A candle, symbol of Ra, the sun. A bowl of water, element of Nun, the primordial ocean. A small symbol, an ankh, scarab, or feather of Ma'at. Incense, frankincense, or myrrh to purify the space. Practice. Light your candle and say, I enter the temple not made by hands. Use this moment for meditation, reflection, or invoking guidance. 4. Align with Ma'at daily. Ma'at isn't just a goddess, it's a principle. To live in harmony, to act with integrity, to speak with truth. Practice. Before sleep, review your day. Where did you act from ego? Where did you honor balance? Speak aloud one intention to restore harmony tomorrow. This reflection turns your life itself into ritual. 5. Use breath as sacred force. Remember the golden ankh used in rituals? The Egyptians saw breath as the carrier of Heka divine power. Practice. Inhale slowly for 4 counts. Hold for 4, exhale for 4. As you inhale, imagine light entering your heart. As you exhale, speak a word: Shu, god of air, Ma'at, or simply peace. Repeat 7 times. This harmonizes your body and spirit. A word of caution. Don't rush, don't seek spectacle. Egyptian magic reveals itself slowly to those who approach with patience, humility, and wonder. And if you feel nothing at first, that's okay. The ancients spent years in silence before uttering their first sacred word. Magic begins not in what you do, but in how deeply you listen. The deeper your inner stillness, the louder the sacred symbols speak. So, what no one told you about Egyptian magic is this: it was never about superstition, never about power for its own sake. It was a sacred technology coded in myth, activated by word, and revealed through devotion. The temples may now be ruins, the scrolls buried, the priests long vanished, but the pattern remains. In the wind that moves through papyrus reeds, in the glint of sunlight over still water, in the silence between your breaths. Because the true temple is not in Egypt, it's in you. Each time you speak with intention, each time you live in alignment with Ma'at, each time you see the world as sacred instead of random, you are reviving a magic older than empires. You are remembering what your ancestors always knew: that life is a living ritual. And you are both priest and participant. Let this be more than just a story. Let it be a return to a world where stars have names, where dreams carry maps, where the divine is not something you worship from afar, but something you become through practice, presence, and purpose. And now, I leave you with a question. If the gods are waiting not in the sky, but in your silence, your symbols, your breath, will you answer? If this awakens something ancient in you, like, comment, and share it with someone you know walks the hidden path. Subscribe for more revelations from Forgotten Worlds. Because this is only the beginning.